London Chinatown, the biggest Chinatown in the UK, attracting 50 million visitors across the world each year. While the look of Chinatown's been improved over years, the flavour it offers is lost.
Changes of chefs, it just changes the palate totally.
Small Chinese businesses are struggling more than ever before.
With uncertainty in the next year or so, whether we can survive or not is still a big question.
And some fear the cultural heart of Chinatown is being torn out.
That's not really what we want to see. We want to see the real Chinatown, not the high-class, juppified restaurants.
Daniel Ming, a Hong Kong Chinese, he came to the UK to join his father in 1971 at the age of 10. His first meal in this new country was in London's Chinatown.
First impression of Chinatown is it's very close-knit community. We looked after each other, we look out for each other. It's more than a home from home, It was a whole new experience for me,
Daniel left London for Birmingham in 1972 when his father decided to move his business. Chinatown has been through many changes since then, including was pedestrianisation in 1985. Coming back to where he started his life in this country, Daniel says the change is mega.
It was used to be just a street with two-way traffic, jammed with traffic. When I first experienced London Chinatown, there were a lot of basement gambling dens, so it was very seedy as well. Now it's a lot more comfortable to the eye and more commercialized.
The move changed not only the look, but the flavours that the neighbourhood offers too. While the footfall of Chinatown is getting international, so now people work in the community, and that takes away the flavour Daniel remembers as a child.
The workforce itself has changed dramatically, because it used to be Hong Kong Chinese coming over and taking up the vacancies, but not anymore, The next generation chefs in Chinatown are not Hong Kong Chinese anymore, They are Vietnamese, Malaysian and mainland Chinese, And their style and their way of cooking is totally different to the Hong Kong Chinese chefs that I'm used to. The nuances you get on your taste bud is not the same as what I used to get in Hong Kong or back in the 20s when I come to Chinatown in London, So it's the lack of expertise in the kitchen.
Despite being picky about the taste, what really made Daniel leave the place he once called home is the cost of living in the ever-priced neighbourhood.
It's the rising rent, really. That's the main thing that drove me out of Chinatown. When I lived in Chinatown, I can afford a room to myself, but now it's just impossible. And it does affect the type of people who come into Chinatown to work, because access into Chinatown for work is quite difficult if you live outside, It's not because I didn't like Chinatown, it's just that the rising rent, it just made sense to move somewhere else.
K-Man, a British-born Chinese growing up in London, he took advantage of the changes in the market when he worked as a sound technician for a restaurant in Chinatown and brought the first bubble tea shop in the UK to the neighbourhood 12 years ago.
It was a very Chinese Asian thing, and I travel back to Asia quite often, and bubble tea is quite a common thing, and there's nothing here, and that's when we thought, oh God, we're missing something here, so let's start something up. It was a trial really, and then it became more than what we originally planned.
As the neighbourhood attracts a wider spectrum of visitors, customers coming to K's tea shop are getting more diverse.
Well, majority of the customers were all students, Chinese students mainly. We've grown into a lot of more vast of other cultures, like European people coming over here, which we never originally promoted the market to.
Kay missed the bustling environment when he first came to the neighbourhood, but says the ambience is disappearing as more small family-run businesses are leaving.
In the last few years before the pandemic, it's just got quieter and quieter. I think the main thing is, we're losing the small businesses, and the small businesses have always been thriving, making a very good cultural mix with everyone. In Chinatown, that is the most important thing.
Now, with more international players coming to the market, Kay certainly feels the pressure.
Because of the mainstream bubble tea stores are now opening in Chinatown, we're becoming less of the attraction to Chinese students. We're a small business, so as a small business, we rely on word of mouth, people that comes here regularly and promotes us.
While running on a slaying profit margin, the rent bill for the business is getting bigger and bigger.
Originally we were paying roughly about 40,000 a year. We're now paying about 70,000 a year. We're probably better off than a lot of people, considering where we are, being on the first floor. And being on the first floor, that's one of the good parts, is because we're a little cheaper in rent. On the ground floor rent, which majority of Chinatown, the rent is horrendous. It's just not achievable, especially current society now. With the customs that we get, the rent don't actually balance off. So it's actually a bad thing, really.
And a year into the pandemic, in and out 3 national lockdowns, the last margin has been taken away.
We're struggling. We are struggling very hard, especially the last couple of years, the years or so. And with the pandemic, it hasn't actually helped at all. We've dropped dramatically. We've lost probably 95% of our customers because we rely on majority students and Chinese customers that comes into the store, and none of them been coming in. Luckily, we have a few regulars and local people that come here. We've kept on, but we're losing money every day since the lockdown. Back in 2020, March, up to now, we've been losing money. With uncertainty in the next year or so, whether we can survive or not is still a big question.
Although rent reductions and lease restructures were made available by Chinatown's landlord Shaftesbury, as will government grants helping small business like Kay's to go through the bad times, Kay says business is not about grants and handouts.
With the staff furlough, with a few grants there to help out, but that's not enough. That's just all gone. It's not about the grant, it's about we making a living. And our living is actually earning money and earning the customers, keeping the customers coming in and keeping that flow. Without that flow, there is no business. Chinese people always strive to build a business, to earn for themselves and for their families. And we've been doing that all our lives. As a small business, that's what I've been trying to do, and it's not easy.
Caroline Knowles writes about Chinese migrants in the UK and is a professor researching urban development at Goldsmiths University of London. She thinks the character of London's Chinatown is fading out.
Like most Chinatowns, London's Chinatown is a tourist attraction, as well as a place for undocumented migrants to begin their new life in the new city. The second and third generation of Chinese, British-born, have moved out. They've become professionals, they've gone on, they're not interested in the restaurant trades. So I think, there's been a huge change in the current generation. Most of the young Chinese migrants I've spoken to, whether they're born in Britain or migrated more recently, don't fit that profile and don't feel that Chinatown speaks to them. I think it's now really a tourist attraction for international tourists.
While the younger generation of Chinese migrants are leaving, those who haven't are at the age of being forced out.
And of course this coincides with the gentrification of London. These are poor areas of poorer working class people, which are quite central. And they get upgraded as people want to live in them, and then the poor are kind of pushed out of those areas. Investors from all over the world really have, in a sense, helped to drive up rents in places like Soho, meaning that small-scale businesses that are poorly capitalised can no longer operate. So money kind of loses its ethnicity when it gets invested in modern projects.
Gordon Chung runs the British Chinese Society, a non-profit organisation that brings together people of Chinese origin in the city through fun activities. And Chinatown is the go-to place for these meetups. As a neighbourhood turns into a tourist attraction, Gordon says it's getting difficult for families to come to visit.
So the problem that we have now is that we bring our families during the weekend to have dim sum. And you can't do that anymore now because you've got obviously congestion charge. I mean, congestion charge lasts up to 10 o'clock in the evening, so which is a really big problem, right, for a lot of business around here.
And the gentrification has taken away not only some of the iconic fixtures, but characters of the neighbourhood too.
We used to have a pagoda there in the main square. That's actually been knocked down by the landlords because they want to expand and gentrify. As a result, they actually increased the rent as well on that area alone. The authenticity, and with the rent increase basically, that's actually impact Chinatown, making restaurants that are more expensive and not more inclusive to all Chinese people. And that's not really what we want to see. We want to see the real Chinatown to support everyone and to show it's the authentic Chinatown, not the high-class, jumpified restaurants.
Chinatown is like the grapevine that we connect with. It's about associating yourself with the old country. It gives them an identity. It gives them a sense of belonging.
Small businesses, it's not about just competing, but also welcoming the customers. If they don't have the chance to thrive, then we'll lose the point of what, small businesses in Chinatown, how we are.